Rotation is quickly approaching, and thus we are reaching the final days of some big decks that are going to be illegal for standard format going forward. The likes of Regidrago V-Star, Lugia V-Star, and Palkia V-Star will no longer be eligible for standard format play. But we all know those ones are going away, and you can still play them in expanded format if you like. But today's video, I wanted to talk about the decks that are technically surviving a standard format rotation this year, but because of the hit that they're going to take to rotation and overall changes to the meta, these decks have basically died over in Japan in their early post-rotation format, and it's likely going to be a struggle over here as well. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about the decks that got destroyed by rotation. For context, I'm basing this post-rotation talk around the Japan meta. They had their rotation a couple of weeks ago now, and we're seeing a lot of the results come in, and we get a glimpse of what our format is going to look like going forward. Up here, I've pulled the decks that have gotten the most top 16 finishes in City League tournaments, and as you can see, there's a lot of familiar faces here: the Raging Bolt, Dragapult, Charizard, Goldengo. We even see Gardevoir in here, which is a deck that a lot of people were concerned would die off because of rotation, and as it turns out, Gardevoir is doing okay. And we even see a couple of new faces here as well, including Hop's Zacian deck, and Cerulege is here. That one we already knew. But the Zoroark deck is also here with 25 appearances in top 16. But there are some other decks that we already have in our standard format that are doing far worse. One of those decks is Miraidon EX. This is a fan favorite deck. I personally love this deck. This was the deck I played to Toronto Regionals in 2023, and it has survived rotation before. It lost Flaffy and Path to the Peak the first time around, but this time around it's losing a lot more, and as such, in Japan, it's only seen 10 top 16 finishes. It hasn't seen any wins, and to be quite honest, the player community over in Japan is quite confused as to what the best way to play Miraidon is going forward. Unfortunately, Miraidon lost a ton of big cards to rotation, the two biggest being Raikou V and Raichu V. Raikou was that big, reliable attacker that could hit for solid damage, and in a Stellar Crown format onward with Area 0 Underdepths, this could be an absolute unit taking one-shots on almost every multi-prize Pokemon in the game. And then Raichu V was that big endgame heavy hitter that could actually take out every Pokemon in the game with enough energy in play. Both of those attack options are gone from Miraidon without any real good replacements for it. We also lose Double Turbo Energy, which was great for getting Iron Hands powered up a little faster. Lumineon and Radiant Greninja were there to help draw more cards. Zapdos with a little bit of a damage boost. Forest Stone to grab any card that we wanted from the deck, and Switch Cart to heal our Pokemon while also moving them out of the active. So Miraidon just takes some massive changes, and we don't really have any great substitutions for these pieces. Without its core pieces, players are kind of scrambling to find a new way to play Miraidon. And as you can see on this graphic here, just a screenshot of the results from Japan, there's a number of different archetypes that people are trying to make Miraidon work. This first one has a couple of Tapu Kokos in there, and the first one is a new one that we're going to get as part of Journey Together with the Thunder Connect attack, where it does 60 damage for a Lightning and a Colorless, and then 20 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon. So it's kind of like a worse Raikou V. And if you play the Area 0 Underdepths with this, which this deck has, you can cap out at 220 damage, which is what Raikou used to do without Area 0 Underdepths. So without any additional damage modifiers, this deck does run one Kieran, so you could get that potentially up to 250. It's a little better, but having to have the Area 0 Underdepths in there to hit 200 damage does kind of stink. The other Tapu Koko is a little more situational, where it's Vengeful Shock Attack for 1 Lightning and a Colorless does 30 damage, and if one of your Pokemon was knocked out on the previous turn, it does 90 more damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. This could potentially set up a 2-hit KO and maybe even take extra prizes with Iron Hands depending on how much HP is left over. This was a card that people did experiment with in Miraidon decks in the past, and it didn't see much play before, and I still think this may not be it. Zapdos EX is a card that saw a little bit of experimentation with when it first came out. It can have free retreat if you've got lightning energy on it, and it does give you a snipe attack that the Miraidon deck normally doesn't have. For 3 lightning energy, you do 120 damage to the active and then 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This build doesn't have any way of preemptively setting up damage like a Halucha, so really you're chasing down Pokemon after you hit them the first time and aren't able to finish them off. I'm generally not a big fan of this card, and having to resort to playing these 2 Tapu Kokos plus the Zapdos does not seem great to me. This second build relies on Magnezone EX. Well, I don't know if I'd say relies on Magnezone. It does have a Magnezone in here on top of 2 Iron Hands for attacking, as well as the Tapu Koko, the one with the paralysis. And Magnezone EX, just to refresh your memory, this is a card we got a long time ago in base set in Scarlet and Violet. 330 HP, it is very thick, and its Energy Crush attack has the potential to do a ton of damage. For 1 lightning energy, does 50 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, depending on the deck, you may hit for 1 billion damage and 1-hit KO everything. You might not do any damage. And then Pulse Launcher for 2 lightning does 220, which is an okay number, but you really want to be hitting 230 to take out stuff like a Roaring Moon or an Iron Hands or something like that. And you're also doing 30 damage to yourself. When you have 300 HP, that's not necessarily the end of the world, but it's not ideal either. Also, this is a stage 2 Pokemon, and this build has no rare candy in it. And I guess if you really wanted to focus on the Magnezone, you could put rare candy in here. I think the idea is set up Iron Hands or Tapu Koko and then build up the Magnezone in the background. But right now, we've only got like 1 or 2 results with a Magnezone build. Miraidon also sees itself as a tech in other decks. There is a new variant of Raging Bolt that features Iono's Pokemon in here, and Miraidon is simply here to help get your Tadbulb and your Watchroll down. We also see one of Miraidon teched into this Pikachu Noctowl deck, where we're using Magneton as a way of accelerating energy to the Pikachu or the Iron Hands for big damage. I don't think this is necessarily the end of the world for Miraidon. It really just needs 1 or 2 new attackers to stabilize the deck. Right now, everything just feels a little too situational, a little too wonky. If it can get 1 to 2 bread and butter attackers, I think we'll be okay again. Roaring Moon EX gets hurt really bad in this rotation, to the point where it's actually only performing half as well as Miraidon. 10 appearances in top 16 is not great, but this goes all the way down to 5. And once upon a time, Roaring Moon was 2nd place at the World Championships this past year, and has been a deck that has been surprisingly good here and there, especially as part of, its own deck. It's been teched into Ancient Box decks, it's been teched into Lost Box decks, and right now it's really hurting. The big problem with Roaring Moon is that it loses Dark Patch, its best way of accelerating energy. Yes, we have Sada's Vitality still in the format, and we're now using Janine's Secret Art to get some even more energy in there, but it doesn't match the speed at which Dark Patch was able to keep up. And the deck as a whole just gets really slow now that Radiant Greninja is gone, so you can't discard energy and draw cards. Pokestop isn't there to fetch you items faster while also cycling through your deck. Trekking Shoes is gone. Luminion wasn't always played in Roaring Moon, but some players did to grab supporter cards and help you get that Sada's Vitality. And then Darkrai V and V-Star are also gone, which is a great way of recovering items like Dark Patch so you can keep the energy on your attackers rolling. As such, we only see 5 results that have a Roaring Moon in them, and some of these are not dedicated Roaring Moon decks. And even so, with those extra decks where Roaring Moon is just teched in, there's only 5 decks that have made top 16 with Roaring Moon in it. Here's an example of one that is as close to a vanilla Roaring Moon list as I could find. We've got the Roaring Moon EX along with the Baby Roaring Moon and Miraidon as our attackers. Lots of draw power with Mew and Pheasantipity. We have the Petron EX for some free pivoting as well. Some other techs in this deck to try and make things work is Morty's Conviction. We've got 1 copy of that, lets you discard a card from your hand and then draw for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And this is a little better in the current format where we've got Area 0 Underdepths and a number of decks are playing that, so you could be drawing upwards of 8 cards with Morty. 1 copy of Janine's Secret Art with less energy acceleration because of Dark Patch. We have an extra copy of Janine's Secret art in here, which lets you accelerate a dark energy to 2 of your Pokemon, and then if one of them's in the active, you poison them. And that's not ideal, but in a deck that's kind of really needs that energy acceleration and you only have so much in a post-rotation world, yeah, I understand why Janine's Secret Art is here now. A big card for Roaring Moon going forward, at least based on what we've seen thus far, is Energy Switch. After playing something like Sada's Vitality or Janine's Secret Art, you can move one of the energies off of your ancient Pokemon to whatever you're going to attack with that turn, allowing you to get to 3 energy in one go. And this isn't ideal, but we have used Energy Switch before. Early builds of Roaring Moon that used to use Moltres V were using Energy Switch, and it was great there. It could be great here as well, though it is a little tougher to get that energy on in the first place. We lost Dark Patch, but instead we get Energy Sticker. This is a card that has been in the format for a little bit and has seen no play whatsoever. This is basically Dark Patch on a coin flip. If you hit heads, you can attach a basic energy from your discard pile onto one of your bench Pokemon, but having to resort to using this as a coin flip makes the deck a lot less reliable. We tech in a couple of Bravery Charms here to prevent our multi-prize Pokemon, and maybe even the Miraidon and the Roaring Moon, really. But Bravery Charm is really here for the Mew EX, the Latias, the Squawkabilly, and so on, so that they don't get blasted by Dragapult, and bumping their HP up makes the math a lot harder for Dragapult to take advantage of you for multi-prize KOs. Our dollar store replacement for Radiant Greninja is Cycling Road. This is a stadium where once during your turn, you can discard a basic energy card and draw a card, so you're only getting 1 card instead of 2, but it does get energy in the discard pile so that maybe you can flip heads on an energy sticker and attach that energy back onto one of your bench Pokemon. Lively Stadium is here to boost our basic Pokemon's HP by 30, again giving us a little more survivability. Even though Frenzied Gouging, you're going to be left with 30 HP anyway, and 60 doesn't really matter. But for the support Pokemon on the bench, where Dragapult's math can be really dicey, Lively Stadium could get you out of a jam. This other take on a Turbo Roaring Moon list goes a little different and leans into some poison effects. We've got a single copy of Brute Bonnet as well as a Binding Mochi. When you put the Ancient Capsule on Brute Bonnet, you can activate poison on both active Pokemon, and by poisoning one of your active Pokemon, you can then put Binding Mochi on them so that they'll swing for an extra 40 damage. This has the benefit for Roaring Moon specifically, where you can use its Calamity Storm attack, do 220 damage if there's a stadium in play, and then do an extra 40 with the Binding Mochi, and then if you've got poison, you're now swinging for 270, which is a much more desirable number without putting yourself in one-hit KO territory against most Pokemon. We also have Blood Moon Ursaluna here as an end-game attacker. There will be times where you're not able to power up a Roaring Moon or another attacker for the end game, and Blood Moon Ursaluna can come in and swing for 240 damage for less than the 5 energy that it appears here. If you're bringing it in when your opponent has 2 prizes remaining, it costs only 1 energy, and if they've got 5 prizes, you can do this for 0 energy. Explorer's Guidance is a card that we normally see in just the Ancient box, but we do have it here now in this particular Roaring Moon build, letting you look at the top 6 cards of your deck, putting 2 into your hand, and then discarding the other 4. This can be another way of discarding energy to reattach with Energy Sticker, among other benefits, getting Ancient cards in the discard pile so that we're powering up Baby Roaring Moon, and so on. Roaring Moon makes a weird appearance in this top 16 Zoroark deck list. Zoroark is a deck that is trying to copy the attacks off the bench, but Zoroark cannot copy Roaring Moon's attack. Instead, it can move energy from one Pokemon to another with Poppy, letting you move up to 2, and then you'll just attach from hand onto Roaring Moon for that big KO. Roaring Moon even makes an appearance in this Wacky Blissey box. I don't know if that's the official name of this deck. This is the only one I could find. But it appears in this wacky deck, and at the core of it is Blissey with that Happy Switch ability, letting you move a basic energy from one of your Pokemon to another one of your Pokemon. Yes, you could move it on the Blissey and use its attack for 180 and draw up to 6 cards. You could use it to power up the Lily's Clefairy that's also in this deck, and could also use it to power up Roaring Moon for that instant KO. Terapagos EX still sees a lot of play in other decks, but as its own deck, it's kind of sank to the bottom of the ocean, as it's only gotten 4 top 16 finishes in Japan so far. It does lose some core pieces like Luminion and Duskull and Thornton and Featherball, but the big loss here is double turbo energy. Having to attach multiple times or find other ways of moving basic energy onto a Terapagos really hurts the deck's consistency to the point where players are not really playing it anymore. And we've got a couple of examples here. For the most part, you'll see, like, when you look at the Terapagos lists in Limitless, you'll see a lot of Charizard these days, but there's still a handful of just Terapagos decks. And let's take a look at one right here. This one has your Terapagos and your Noctowl to draw cards. We still have a little bit of Dusknoir action in here as well. We have the Bouffalons here to make them tanky, a 1/1 Pidgeot line as well, even the Badoo to help slow things down so you can get set up. But the biggest difference here is all of that rainbow at the bottom of the different energy types, as well as Glass Trumpet, where you can use this to get energy from your discard pile to 2 of your Pokemon. So 1 energy each, and this can help you power up multiple Terapagoses. And I think the inconsistency of that, and we do have Crispin as well, but only 2 Glass Trumpets as well as 1 Crispin, and then you have to make room for more energy than you did before, really hurts this deck to the point where players aren't really trying it out, and it's not seeing much success in Japan at the moment. Chien-Pao is a deck that is kind of already dead. The meta kind of turned against it once Dragapult got really hot and it became really tough to protect your Frigibaxes from them. But should also note here that Chien-Pao got hurt really bad in this rotation to the point where it's only also seen 4 appearances in top 16. This list is absolutely brutal for Chien-Pao. We not only lose our way of getting energy into the discard pile with Radiant Greninja, we lose a draw engine there. We also lose Moonlight Shuriken as our sniper. We lose Bibarel for drawing cards. We lose Pokestop for drawing cards. We lose Manaphy to protect the bench, canceling Cologne to blast other Manaphy so that we can snipe around them with Greninja, or take out a walling Pokemon like a Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. And then our primary draw supporter, Irida, also rotates out, which let us grab a water Pokemon and an item card, and that is gone as well. Having lost so much, Chien-Pao needs to be a very different thing going forward, and a handful of players have had a bit of success trying. Again, by handful, it's only 4, and they have taken very different ways to solving the same problem. This first list uses the Dunsparce as its draw engine. This is something that Chien-Pao players have done in the past. It actually won a major Asian tournament in the last year or so, and I actually did try this deck, a variation of this deck, out on the channel. The Dunsparce's runaway draw lets you draw 3 cards, and then you shuffle the Dunsparce and any attached cards back into the deck. Can be a nice way of drawing cards, sort of as a substitute for Bibarel. However, it still doesn't get around the fact that the Frigibaxes are just so vulnerable to Dragapult snipes. We also see a couple of copies of Morty's Conviction here, which has the potential to help you draw a lot of cards if you discard a card. However, it is dependent on your opponent's bench size, so this isn't going to be the most consistent draw option. Replacing Radiant Greninja sorta kinda is Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. Its Torrential Pump Attack does allow you to hit the active and the bench for 100 to the active, 120 to the bench, and then you have to shuffle that energy back into the deck. However, this is a 2-prize Pokemon, and also it doesn't have the same utility as Radiant Greninja. It doesn't discard cards and draw cards, but this one also has the potential to trap your opponent's support Pokemon in the active with that Sob Attack. Chien-Pao Pidgeot is a deck that players have experimented with a little bit. Having multiple stage 2s is freaky deaky, admittedly, but this player did get a 5th place finish with it, and we do know Pidgeot is an awesome card, allowing you to search your deck for any one card that you want from the deck. So having that draw power is really nice, though Chien-Pao is a combo heavy deck, and I do oftentimes feel like you want multiple pieces and not just one. So Pidgeot does kind of falter there, but maybe the combination of Pidgeot and Pheasantipity can be enough. We also see Regigigas teched into the deck. This is the one from Prismatic Evolutions, where for 4 energy, it does 100 damage. And if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Terra Pokemon, this also does 230 more damage, giving you an option to one-shot a Charizard EX with only 4 energy. This build even has Technical Machine Evolution, where turn 1 going second, you can slap TM Evo to whatever you've got in the active, plus an energy, and then use this TM that allows you to evolve 2 of your bench Pokemon to the next stage up. And that can get you your Arctibax and your Pidgeotto up and running so that if you get Badooed on the following turn, you still potentially have the opportunity to evolve up without having to need a Ultra Ball or something to search them out. And just in general, having that stage 1 already set makes your setup even faster. This 8th place list actually goes a step further and draws the Noctowl engine in here. You need to Terra Pokemon in place. You're either going to have Wellspring Mask Ogerpon or Terapagos in there. But if you do and you evolve up to Noctowl, you can grab 2 trainer cards of your choice and put them into your hand. And we only have a 2/2 line of Noctowl here, and it's technically, yes, you could recycle them between Super Rod and Night Stretcher, but I think at most you're going to get a total of 4 trainer cards from your deck with the Noctowl engine, and I'm not sure that's enough. I think I said that the last one was the last one, but no, this is the actual last one. This one has all sorts of stuff in it. Besides the Chien-Pao and the Baxcalibur line, we've got a Pidgeot in here. We also have the Revavroom, which is sort of the replacement for Bibarel and Greninja in one. Lets you discard an energy card and then draw up to 6 cards. This could potentially be good. I do like the draw power and the discard synergy, but it is a metal type and it requires 2 retreat, and there are going to be times where this gets stuck, and that's not going to be ideal. We also have Greninja EX here, which is sort of kind of replacing Radiant Greninja. It does have the Mirage Barrage attack, where you can discard 2 energy from this Pokemon and do 120 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, actually doing more damage than Radiant Greninja. However, this is a stage 2, and it's going to be quite the pain to set up, and it also drops 3 prizes. Its first attack is not bad as well. For 1 water energy, you do 170 damage, and you can grab a card of your choice from your deck and put it into your hand. Ancient Box is another deck that has fallen on hard times, to the point where it's only seen 3 top 16 finishes in Japan so far. Ancient Box doesn't actually lose all that much to rotation. Yes, the deck gets a little slower because we don't have Radiant Greninja to discard an energy and draw cards. We also don't have Pokestop to draw cards, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot. And then Cabalion's a card that not every Ancient Box deck was playing. However, some major changes to the meta, the popularity of decks like Dragapult are horrifying for Ancient Box. There's some really thick Pokemon like Archaludon that are easily taking 1-hit KOs on all of your Pokemon, while Archaludon is 300 HP and can be really tough to get through. And then on top of that, we also have to deal with Badoo, which is slowing down Ancient Box even further. Technically, we have only 3 real Ancient Box decks. 2 of them that I crossed out. The one with the Squawkabilly in it's more of a Turbo Roaring Moon, and then the other one's a really weird mashup of Roaring Moon EX plus Roaring Moon plus the Zoroark deck, and we'll look at a couple of these here. This first Ancient Box that got 8th place is as close to a vanilla list as I could find. We've got our main counts of our ancient Pokemon, as well as heavy counts of Sada's Vitality, Explorer's Guidance, Earthen Vessel, and so on, but there are a couple of adjustments here, including the inclusion of Monkey Dory as a potential way of taking out Badoos. Once during your turn, if you've got Dark Energy on this Monkey Dory, you can move 3 damage from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. This also just has the benefit of softening targets up, or even potentially getting some initial damage on Pikachu EX if they're trying to use that to wall off. Brilliant Blender is also in the mix here as a way of just getting 5 ancient cards into the discard pile so that you can attack harder with Roaring Moon. One weird addition to this deck is Turbo Energize. Ancient Box is a deck that I usually think of going really fast with not much trouble for energy acceleration. Like, a lot of Ancient Box decks don't even run Dark Patch because it's for the most part not necessary. But this build does have Turbo Energize, where you can accelerate 2 basic energy from your deck and put them onto your bench Pokemon in any way you like. I think this probably makes more sense in a world with Badoo. If they're slowing you down and you can't play any items, you can use Turbo Energize to get that energy in play. This Ancient Box list uses the Dunsparce as its draw engine. This is something that players were experimenting with in the past as a potential combo. It is a really nice way of drawing cards, but it does take away from your overall ancient card count, making your Roaring Moons do a little less damage more often than not. We do see that this Ancient Box list also adopts Badoo for that Itchy Pollen attack, where you can item lock your opponent for the next turn, slowing your opponent down a little bit, hopefully giving you more time to get more ancient cards in the discard pile so that Roaring Moon can swing for even more damage. Legacy Energy also makes an appearance here as the Ace spec, providing 1 rainbow energy, and if the Pokemon this is attached to gets knocked out, they drop 1 less prize. So if Roaring Moon gets knocked out with this, it actually drops 0 prizes, hopefully keeping you in the game at least 1 turn longer. Here's that wacky Roaring Moon Zoroark deck list where we've got the 3 Roaring Moon EX and 3 Baby Roaring Moon alongside a 2/2 line of N Zoroark EX. Now, N Zoroark EX is not built to attack in this deck. It has to copy an attack from the bench in order to work, and we don't have those Pokemon in here to copy. We are using this pretty much just for its trade ability, which allows you to discard any card from your hand and then draw 2 cards, giving you a bit of a draw engine here. I'm not sure it's entirely worth it, but it certainly is an option. We also have our dollar store Greninja here in Cycling Road, where you get to discard an energy card and draw an additional card. Poor Klawf. A number of people love this deck, and it has been on a bit of a tear in recent months, but rotation absolutely destroys it to the point where Klawf has showed up in a total of 1 deck in top 16 so far. The losses are absolutely bonkers. It's losing double turbo energy, so we don't have a way of getting enough energy on there consistently in order to attack. We're losing Lumineon, Oranguru V, Seal Stone, Electrode, Radiant Sneasler. Like, all of these cards were incredible in that deck to the point where I don't think Klawf even functions without this stuff. Due to its massive losses, we only see 1 Klawf in top 16, and it's not even a Klawf deck. It is more of a Badoo box, where Badoo is item locking your opponent and then you are poisoning them with the Brute Bonnet, and where possible you can use Ogre Pawn to attach grass energy to itself and then move it to the appropriate attacker, whether it is Klawf or Terapagos or something else. I don't think this is the future of Klawf, and I mean, congratulations to this player for the top 16 finish. I don't know if this is truly going to be a meta relevant deck someday, but I mean, kudos to them for really cooking on this one. The last one on this list of decks that got destroyed by rotation is Iron Thorns EX. And not to say that Iron Thorns isn't getting played, because it's actually seeing a lot of play, but Iron Thorns as its own deck has seen 0 appearances in top 16. Yes, of the other decks, you can make the argument like, oh, see, it still has some placements. Miraidon was in 10, Chien-Pao was in 3. Iron Thorns is literally dead with 0 appearances in top 16 thus far. Losing Lost City, Energy Lotto, and Lost Vacuum does stink, but double turbo energy is absolutely backbreaking for Iron Thorns. Getting 3 lightning energy on there, or just 3 of any energy onto Iron Thorns, is such a pain. You could theoretically run Electric Generator on there, but now you have to run a ton of generators and a ton of energy, and that clogs up the deck and kind of takes away from Iron Thorns being fast and setting up. So without a efficient way of getting energy onto Iron Thorns, the deck completely falls apart. Because of this, we are seeing Iron Thorns teched into some other decks as a walling Pokemon of sorts. Yes, it doesn't actually wall off, but it does shut off abilities, making it harder for your opponent to play. So it does see a home in Dragapult decks. It's also seen a home in some Milotic control decks as well. And I see a couple of Future Box lists here and there. I didn't put Future Box in this whole thing because Future Box is a deck that has been dead for quite some time, but just know that Future Box is also pretty much dead as well. And there we go. I hate to break the bad news to you, but all of those decks are really struggling in the post-rotation format thus far. Again, not to say that these decks are dead forever. Maybe someone will find the right combination of cards right now that will turn these decks on their heads and bring them back to life. Maybe it just needs cards from a future set that will resurrect them. But at the very least, in our immediate post-rotation future, it looks like these decks are going to be in for a really hard time. What you do with that information is up to you. You might want to be the savior of a certain archetype, or maybe you just move off to something else. Whatever the case is, I'll leave that up to you. But for now, I got to get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at In Third Person. You can find me on Twitch at In Third Person, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website inthirdperson.com for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. I'm going to continue my post-rotation preview content where I've been working my way down the Japanese tier list of all the good decks. I kind of wanted to talk about this particular subject because I found it interesting to cover the decks that really aren't seeing much success, and also just so we can get these out of the way, because I know there are people that are like, how's Miraidon gonna work? And how is Iron Thorn or whatever? And at least we can just say right now it's not good, and we can just do that all versus someone waiting for months from now to get the here's the Miraidon preview video and just be like, yeah, this sucks. So right now these are all bad, but if things turn around for any of these decks, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Japan for the next couple of months. And if there are any developments for these decks that make it worthwhile to come back to them and make a video for them, I will do that. So keep your fingers crossed that all of these decks do find a way to come back at one point or another. Time to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. We're out. Bye-bye.